Hello, I'm Jenny with GoBox Art Crate, and today we're going to do the other half of our Snowman Santa project. We're doing Santa, so hopefully some of you guys got to join me for this last video, or maybe you're doing the Santa first. It doesn't really matter what order you go in, but this is the one I'm going to teach right now, and this is how it looks to start. So the two of these are a kit you can buy on our website, gobox.com, and it comes with your pack of paint with all the colors you need, and then you just follow along the tutorial with me. If you have your own brushes, you can use them, or you can buy our $10 pack, which is a great value for the type of brushes they are. I'm going to set that aside. And let's go ahead and talk about the colors. So in your pack, the one color we don't use in this project is silver, but you absolutely could use it if you wanted to. You could put silver accents through the beard or in the hat or anywhere else that you wanted to, in the hair, mustache, all that. So, but right now for this project, I'm just gonna be using black and white, phthalo blue, bright red, and the craft yellow there. So these will all make wonderful colors for the project. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I just threw the ball for my dog about 1,000 times, I swear. It will keep her, hopefully, from barking throughout my filming here. And but now let's get into the holidays here. Hopefully you guys are getting some time to yourselves. Thank you so much for purchasing this kit and taking some time for yourself to paint. I love these. They are freestanding. It just stands on its own. And they're made by a woman-owned business, small business. So she's happy you guys are ordering, and I'm happy you guys are ordering, but let's do this. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this close by. And I'm thinking okay, so we're gonna start with the face. So when I looked at this project online, when I looked at the wood cutout, I thought, gosh, that would be so much fun if this part became the beard. And so yeah, you could like paint this as just a Santa hat, but why do that when you could do this? So that's what I'm going to teach you through. Let's make the flesh tone first. So it is just kind of a light peachy tone. I can show you how to make a darker skin tone too. Brush wise, let's take out of our brush pack. This is the number 8 brush. It's your second largest in the pack. If you're using your own brush, it's about a 1/4 inch wide and flat. Pretty much any brush will do. We're gonna mix some color. Let's make a kind of pale orange first. So we're gonna scrape off a little yellow, plop it down. Now use the corner of your brush and grab a little red, just a little dot. You can see there's just a tiny dot of red on there. Let's mix them together. See how that red overpowers right away? I'm just making a pale orange. Mixing flesh tones can be a little challenging and take a little time, but I'm gonna show you the best way that I can for us to do this. So there I've got kind of a pale orange, kind of actually it's like sunny delight, I would call that. Now I'm gonna scrape off a little white. Maybe I'll use a different clean brush so I'm not polluting so much of my white. Plop that down in there. Let's mix it together. So I'm just gradually pulling a little orange in there. And I can tell already this would be a very jaundiced Santa. We don't want him quite that way. I guess I'm gonna pollute my white. Getting a little more white in there and a little more red. So that, remember I was saying mixing the flesh tone can be a bit frustrating. But yeah, jaundiced Santa is not necessarily a good look. So just add more red and white till you get a nice Scandinavian color. Because Santa's from Lapland. So I just think, okay, probably not getting a huge amount of sun. He has that porcelain skin. Now, if you did want to do a darker skin tone, there's different ways you can do it. Technically, all 3 primary colors, if you mix them together, that you get brown. It's with this particular yellow though, this yellow has some white in it that makes it really opaque. So it can not make the greatest brown. It can take a little bit of time. So I think one of the best ways to do it is to start with your orange that we made and just gradually stir in a little black. And that's gonna make a color that's kind of greenish, which obviously we don't want. So what you wanna do is add more red and a little more black. And between the red and black, you can end up getting a nice warm dark color. And you can just play around with that. You can add more blue if you want, but it will turn it a little kind of towards the, I don't know, cooler tone, because blue is a cool color. So I do like adding red and black together and playing around with that. So, okay. On to other things. I'm gonna wash that brush off. Let's pick up our smallest brush. And I can tell already I'm gonna run out of paint right away, which means I need to mix that again. So I'm just going to start by making right around here and towards the middle, kind of right where this bumps up. And kind of between here and here, I try to aim for the middle. I'm gonna make a little circle. I'm trying to compare this in size. This is probably about the size of a medium grape or a large blueberry. And then from here, I make the cheeks. They just round up. They're about as tall as the nose is. Maybe they can be a little taller. And it's just gonna round down. They're a larger circle. If I were to complete this circle, it would be like the size of the Costco grapes. Big ones. This is the way I've been drawing cartoon Santas for quite a while, ever since I started my paint studio about in 2011. And I found it's just a cute and easy way for people to learn how to paint a whimsical face. So even though our hat ends up being white, I want to trace the bottom edge, so this part of the hat, it just barely goes right above the cheeks, comes across, and ends up right about there. So it gives you enough room for some eyes and all that good stuff. We do rosy up the cheeks, so right now your color's just gonna be really light. Let's go ahead and take either your number 8 or your number 4 brush, one of those two, whatever you feel comfortable with. And let's start by filling in the nose. So mine's pretty pale. I could even warm that up a little more. I think I just overdid it with the white. Yeah, that's a little bit better color. It's a little rosier. I like him to have a little bit of color. I'm sure he gets outside of Christmas Eve, right? So I'm gonna fill in the cheeks. You can leave, if you feel more comfortable leaving a space so you know where the difference is between the nose and the cheeks, you can do that. We do re-outline everything. If you're gonna do that, just leave the tiniest little space, tiniest little sliver of outline there. Now the acrylic paint on this MDF wood cutout, it dries really fast, which is kind of nice for this project we're doing. So you can usually go back in and add a second coat of paint right away. You'll know if it's not time to add a second coat if the original coat just sort of gets pushed around, because acrylic paint won't stick to itself if the bottom coat's too wet. Okay, so before I fill in the back part of the face where the eyes are, I'm gonna rosy this up just a bit. This part's really fun, I love doing this part, but you wanna grab the tiniest bit of red because you can see it tends to overpower. Now save some of your peach, or you're gonna have to remix it, which is fine, you can do either way, but I try to save it. Sometimes I'll forget. There, nice blushy color. And I'm just gonna come across the top of the nose and just sort of dab that in and across the top of the cheeks. You can see if you need to add more red. It's gonna be really cute with more red. He's just been out in the cold. Or he's been adding rum to his hot chocolate. He's blushing. You can bring this down. And I just sort of let my brush run out of paint so that most of the colors at the top of the nose or the cheeks, and as I get down in here, it's running out of color. And we'll probably end up touching this up some more, adding a bit more paint. As it dries, it'll dry a little more transparent than it is right now. I'm gonna wash this brush. I'm gonna switch down to my number 4 just because I have a small space to fill in, and I've got some paint left over from mixing on my brush here. I'm going to steal it and I'll add some of this rosiness to that, and then you can fill in behind here. Now because this is so pink, you should be able to come all the way down to the bottom, to the very top edge of the circles. But if you're worried about losing those, you can leave the tiny amount of wood showing like we did with the nose. Just bring it around here to the side. Put some sideburns in there so a lot of this gets covered up. Okay. We will go back to that. We'll mix some more flesh color if needed and get some more paint going on there. I think I might actually turn the intensity up on my color. Just noticing this one, it's really vivid compared to my very pale Santa here. So that's easy to fix because we're going to put another coat of paint on, so we can alter the color without too much issue. Okay, now let's see here. I think I want to get Santa's beard and mustache sketched in, and then the back coat, which is kind of a smoky gray blue. We'll get that going on the beard. Just washing my brush off. Let's mix our color with this big brush, and we'll set the brush aside. You don't need to wash it because we're gonna go right to it with getting the base coat on. So I'm gonna mix phthalo blue, plop some down, and some white. You can see, I know I said about, let's not pollute our white, but I always do. I just get kind of lazy about washing my brushes, but I just always grab it from the edge. I don't seem to have too much of an issue with that being a problem because I do it all the time. I'm moving my color box out of the way. Now to turn this more of a smoky color, we're going to add, just use the corner of your brush, pollute your black, add a little black in there. You can see how that changes it right away. It's actually a really nice color. Yeah. Maybe a little more black. So yeah, it's just kind of a smoky blue. And just set your brush aside, we'll use it in a minute. Let's pick up our smallest brush. Just dip that right in there. And we're gonna sketch out the mustache. So I thought this is cute, the way this looks like a mustache here. You wanna come right under the center of the nose and just make a little kind of mountain shape here. See, it looks like a mountain, triangular shape. And let's bring this down and all the way to the ends here where it will meet. You could even scoop back up. Like on this one, it looks like it kind of scooped back up and followed along there. There's plenty of time to change this and touch it up. So I dipped down and scooped back up. This side is going to be a little bit longer just because of the way this is laid out. And we'll just leave this for now. Wash your brush. Let's pick up this big guy here and we're just going to coat the bottom. Leave the mustache just the regular wood color. Move you over. Utilize the thin edge of your brush to get right up to the edges. Now you can paint the sides of this as well, but you will notice if you feel the sides are a little rougher, it's just the way these are cut and everything. They're a little rougher on the edges, so it'll take a little bit more paint. I just recommend you, if you're gonna paint the edges, just do it afterwards. You don't even have to have it be the same, like you don't have to wrap every single color around unless you want to. That's fun to do. But you could just paint them like solid green or solid red or something like that. You just would want to obviously be careful around the edges so you're not getting paint, whatever color you paint on the sides up around the front. With acrylic paint, everything can be touched up, so I don't want you to ever worry about mistakes or anything like that. Just don't worry about it because we can touch it up. Okay, that's gonna dry a bit. Let's get a coat of red on the hat, just base red. Dry, we're gonna use the same big brush. Dry it off. I always get a lot of water that collects on this metal ferrule, so I try to dry that off too. And we're just gonna go right up to Santa's forehead here. You don't have to touch that peach color because we put this big fur border here. Just come down kind of close. It feels like we're little elves working in Santa's workshop, painting the toys. There's just something very special about hand-painted wood items. I just love it. I love the look of them, and I love the process of it too. So I'm using the thin edge of my brush and getting right in this little groove here. And on the puff ball of the hat, you can get in there with the red, or you can do it with white later. It looks like I used white. I think either way would be fine. I guess you just let the brush dictate. If you end up getting red in there, it's meant to be red. So what I'm doing right now is just kind of smoothing out my brush strokes. Ah, it looks great. Looking good. Gotta go back to that skin though. It's real close, very, very close to this color. I feel like this was maybe just a little bit more vivid peach, and this ended up having maybe too much white in it. It's such a small difference though, I'm just being picky. All right. This time, I'm gonna use my number 8 and I'm gonna scrape off white, a good blob of white, so that I don't have to go back and mess up my white again. And then I'll add some yellow. You could even just save some white to the side. And I'll add just little ticks of red, little dots. Don't know why I call them ticks. Maybe a little more yellow. So this is where you're drawing the fine line between jaundice or not jaundice. This is actually right about the color. So let's paint some on. It looks like it's like the exact color that I used on here. I'm gonna add a little more red. So doing this, I can see I'm gonna have to redo the blushy spots on the cheeks. No biggie. Painting is just kind of a series of adjustments, I guess. Do a lot of that. The second coat, though, is nice because that first coat did dry a little bit transparent, especially you can notice it up here. So while this is still wet, I'll add just a tiny dot of red, maybe more than a tiny dot. So I get the blush color, and having the peach base be wet still while adding this on is a good thing. Now you might have to wipe your brush off if you've got too much paint going on, and then just use what little paint you put across the top of the cheeks here and bring it down. Let your brush run out of paint. You can always just alternate back between the peachy color and the pinky color to get them to blend. Here we go, Santa. I always thought it was really cool that Santa was from Lapland because my grandma is from Finland. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. I'm gonna wash my brush. I think Lapland overlaps into Sweden too. We'll claim it for Finland. Yeah, so I'm just kind of adjusting the blushed parts of the face with the peachy parts of the face, but this did warm up the overall color a lot, which is what I was looking for. There you go. Move my little fancy zoom in here. Now I'm gonna wash the brush and go to my base peach color, so the one without the pink mixed in. And, okay, it's drying up. I'm gonna get a second coat back here. You just need to see kind of the bare bones of where the cheeks and nose are so that when we outline it later, you know where they are. So just come as close as you can here. Like I can definitely see where I need to outline. There. So I kept the blush parts on the cheeks and nose since those are going to be more exposed to the weather. And then we'll let that dry before we outline it. Let's go back to the mustache now. So we've got our blue-gray color. I'm going to take my smallest brush and I'm going to mix in a little white with some of that. So this is going to have a base color too. Later on we put pure white over the top. But the base color is going to be a little bit lighter than this. You can see the mustache is quite a bit lighter than the rest of the beard. But we do want to get a nice base coat going. Bluebeard. And on my original, I did bring this color down in through here into the groove. So you can either use this small brush, or if that's not working super well, the skinny edges of these flat brushes works really good. Just carefully go in there. Try not to overlap your nose or cheeks. Get it as best as you can. this mustache pretty simple, but you could be pretty ornate with it if you wanted to. Like really like curl the ends under or something. Lots of fun stuff you could do. And we definitely detail this up a bit later. You can see we make it look more furry and we add a darker outline, kind of the smoky grayish blue outline around the bottom. Very cute already. Let's see how my red's doing. I don't feel like I need a second coat. It's really opaque, which means I can't really see through it too much. If you feel like you want a second coat on there, you can definitely do that. It's just gonna make it more pure red. It looks like I just did one coat on this one. And for right now, I think this is a good time for us to mix up our outline color for the nose and the cheeks. Wash my brushes real quick. And now we want to make a brownish shade. So I'm going to put these aside here. You can see, I'll hold this up. You can kind of see the shade. It's grayish brown. It's actually pretty close to what I was making here. Brush-wise, let's mix it up with our number 8 brush. I try to remember not to mix color with this little brush because it's delicate and pushing things around on the palette can really end up making it fray. I just try to preserve it as good as I can. So let's do red. Scrape off a little yellow. Maybe a little more yellow. We're making orange. About equal parts, maybe a little more yellow than red. And now let's put a little blue in there. Just a little. Now this turns it to be kind of a grayish brown shade, which is great for outlining rather than using solid black. You can warm it up with a little more red if you like. I do tend to like it a little bit warmer. And if it's too dark, you could even add some of this peachy color to it. You don't want to lighten it too much though. We definitely want it to look like an outline. You can see there, it's high contrast. There we go. Okay, gonna wash the brush. We're not outlining it with this brush. This is where our little one comes in to play. One thing I like to do when I'm outlining is I like to mix, by poking my brush in the water here, I like to mix a drop of water in this. And then, here I am mixing with my small brush. It's okay, I'm just adding water. And I'll just kind of knock off some of the paint, the excess paint on my palette or on the paper towel so you're not starting a small outline with a lot of paint on your brush. And I'll just go around the sides and top of the nose here. Just take your time. Okay. Now top sides of the cheeks. And just press real light. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on here. Just a little bit. Using just the very tip of the bristles. Up and over. The cool thing about acrylic paint, I know I mentioned this in the snowman video, if you ever mess up anything, you can completely paint over it. Like I could start with a fresh slate. I could paint this whole thing in white and just start with a fresh state and start over. So that is always a comforting thing, and if it helps you stress less about what you're painting, think about that. Yeah, you can always go over it and start again. Okay, I'm gonna be okay with that outline. It makes those cheeks and nose really stand out, and they really stand out right now, but as we add other things in there, it will not be so apparent as it is now. Okay, so before we start working on the beard, let's get working on the mustache. Just grab one of your medium brushes, either the number 8 or number 4, and let's mix up blue and white again. And now some black. We definitely want this more of a gray tone. Very similar to what we did here. Could even be a little darker. And I'll just wash this one off because we're going to be using the little brush. Okay, so littlest brush, dip it in the water, stir a little bit of that water into this paint, just pressing real lightly with the tip of the bristles. Maybe, here's what I like to do. I like to pull and twist my brush, and then that helps knock off excess paint. And then it also leaves that paint on the palette, so I can go back and redip the tip of the bristles and just use any of that paint without just giving it away to the paper towel. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come under here, and I'm sort of doing these, if you can see what I'm doing, I'll do it right here. This sort of brush stroke on the edge of the mustache, that bottom edge of the mustache. And go all the way across. Then later on, when we add the white to the mustache, this will get more subdued, so it's going to kind of just be a background thing, but it's sort of a way of outlining it too. I feel like I could go a little darker. Yeah, so right now it's gonna look really bold. But as we add that white in later, it's not gonna be so bold. All right, before we let that dry up, let's use our number 4 brush, so your little about 1/8 inch wide brush. Let's add some more white to this, lighten it up a bit so you get kind of more of a true gray. A little bit lighter than this color. And we're going to paint Santa's sideburns, which are going to come up here along the side of the cheek and come down. And we add white whiskers on top of these. So right now it's just going to be blocked in and look weird, like Santa has blue hair. We know he doesn't. You think Santa's bald on top? I bet he is. Okay, we'll get to work on the beard in a minute. What I want to do right now is get a very light blue coating of paint, you can see it there, on the ball. And the reason I do it blue at first, and it's the same reason I do the beard blue at first, is because when we come in with pure white, little furry brush strokes, that will give the depth. Because if you just used white, you wouldn't really see the depth of like the individual directions of fur and all that. And it's the same thing with the hat lining here. So I always start with a lighter base color. So we're just gonna do white and blue. Just a little bit of blue, so it's a really sky blue color. Look at me polluting my white like crazy. And this you just are, I think I need a little more blue. Okay, I overdid it. This we're just brushing on a plain coat. And on my original, I brought white down in here, so we can do that later with a tiny brush. And that's gonna dry. This part that goes across the face, I'm not gonna do quite yet because I need to paint the eyes on. And also I can see in this groove my red is still a little bit wet, which would mean if I accidentally got my brush in there, I would have a pink fur lining, which I don't think would be a bad thing. I think that would be pretty cool. But I'm going to just switch around and work on something else first. So let's get the eyes done. So you can use your smallest brush or mix it up, mix the paint with your a little bit bigger brush. We're just gonna add a little more blue to this white and blue color here. And you can make the eyes blue, or you can do brown eyes, or you can add yellow to this and make green eyes. It's entirely up to you. I just kind of did the standard Coca-Cola Santa with the Nordic skin and the blue eyes. So I'm gonna use my little brush here to paint those. They're very tiny. And I have taught a Santa face like this so many times. And what I will tell people is, so here's your nose and mouth. Think of it like a little rising sun. Like these are hills, and you've got a little rising sun here and here. So it's a little half circle. And if you don't like them that small, you can definitely make them bigger. This is just the way I designed it originally, but you can design your own. Kind of looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid. There, little close together eyes. That's what makes him cute. Totally cute. It's funny, every time I do a face, just the slightest differences can change things up a little bit. Like on this one, the cheeks are maybe a little, they're not as tall. And this one, they're taller. And it's funny how it changes the face up just a bit. It's okay. All right, let's start talking about swirls. So these are imperfect swirls. I know if you did the snowman with me, we talked about these, and I'll give you all the tips that I gave with these. But these ones can be less perfect than these were, because this was silver on top of black, so it really felt like, I gotta get this right. But these ones, they're a little, it's supposed to be hair. Some of them we slightly outline or just put a darker accent in there. And it's just a really fun way to do the beard. Now, if you wanted to do just normal hair, not the swirls, you could take like your number 8 brush and use the skinny edge and just go with the flow of the beard. So the gravity obviously pulls it down, but you'd want to curve it kind of on the sides here to go with the shape of this. And you'll do streaks of, just make a pale gray first and streak some of that in there. And then once that dries, you can streak some white in there too. So you have 3 different layers of color. You've got your base coat and a mid-tone and then the light tone. If you're gonna do the swirls with me, let's do it. So let's pull aside some unpolluted white. Plop it on down. I'm gonna add a drop of water to this. It's gonna turn it very kind of light silvery gray, oyster gray. It's not gonna affect anything, so don't worry about that. So I'm just thinning it out a little bit with water, so it's about the consistency of like heavy cream. So not as thin as water and not as thick as like straight out of the tube white. I'll just set this down here. I can grab some paint off of it if I need to. I'm gonna take my smallest brush. Now here is where, in fact, before I do this, let me show you what I showed on the snowman video. So if you push hard, here's what's happened. You get a thick line, and maybe some of these you want to be thick. If you use less pressure, as Bob Ross says, 3 hairs and some air, you get a much more delicate swirl. I just have a mix of both in there. And one thing to keep in mind too is swirls can be tough, especially at first. I've seen a lot of people struggle with them until they really start getting it in practice. What I notice most of the time is people don't curl it in enough, so they might do that. And you can see the difference between those two. All you have to do is just bring that in further. So yeah, big difference between that and this. So with that being said, light pressure, swirl that in really far. Let's go for it. So use your littlest brush and your watered down paint. Let's just start with one that's off to the side. Here we go. And then off of I always just have them kind of go off of each other or in between. And like I said, if you did the snowman already, you don't have to be as delicate with these. They can be, you can have some thicker ones. It'll look kind of funny until we get the mustache matching in color, because we have to add white to the mustache. I do feel like I almost have too much water. And you can do these in different sizes, just mixed in here. So the overall look you want is a lot of white, because his beard is white. We don't want him to have a blue beard. This one ended up being a little more gray in the background, but this blue will work just fine. This one that's more blue. In fact, these will probably stand out just a bit more. And you can notice I twirl in different directions too. I like to mix it up. And then occasionally, if there's a little tiny space, you might have room to put a mini. I must have been inspired by this cookie cutter my mom had in the 80s. And I loved it. It made the hugest cookies. The Santa cookie was probably really similar in size to this. And the beard was covered in swirls, just based on the indentation patterns. And I'm almost 100% positive it was like 1980s Tupperware brand. I remember that. So funny. I'm sure she still has it. I should try and steal it. Or borrow it, I mean. But yeah, it was like the cookie I always loved making. Partly because it was so big. And then the other reason is that fun beard. So I bet subconsciously I was thinking about that 1980s Tupperware cookie cutter when I designed our Santa here. I just bought cookie cutters today. That's funny. I had to go to Michael's to grab some art supplies. And I went early in the morning because I know, like, going to Michael's any time around Christmas is insanity. So I went just right after they opened. And they had really fun Christmas shapes and cookie cutters. They had the plastic ones, which were like the Tupperware one. You know, you just stamp it down and you lift it away. But theirs are fancy. They have like a plunger, so you can actually like release the cookie dough. Whereas we had to like peel it out and redo it over and over. Finally, some cookie cutter designer got smart. yeah, I bought a little Christmas tree, a snowman, a reindeer, and what was the other one? Oh, a little Christmas, like one of those glass balls that goes on the tree. And they're just the metal kind, the little cutout shapes. And my gosh, they're on sale. Like, it was like $1.50 each. Super good deal. A lot of their Christmas stuff is on sale for 50% off, so get there early or go online and do it that way. There's my little plug for Michaels. They have provided me with so many art supplies over the years, and their staff are always so nice to work with, so I will always give them a shout out. Looking good, Santa. You can even do like little spin-off, I think I mentioned that earlier, little tiny ones that fill in little itty bitty spaces. They're a bit harder to do. There. I don't know what I just did there. I didn't like it. There. Okay. That needs to dry just a bit. And I will now scoot this up just a bit. I'm going to just dip my brush in just the plain white, not the watered down white. And I'll come in here on the mustache, starting at the very top. So I'm streaking this color down, and I'm leaving the occasional little streak of this dark bluish gray background color, kind of overlapping the outline down here. Just some parts I'm overlapping more than others into the dark outline. So my goal here is I want to reduce the size, the thickness of that dark outline, but still keep it there. And in fact, I may end up going back and touching that up. And if needed, you can bring this color up in here if it's too big of a difference. It does kind of lift the mustache up a bit here. So some parts might have more white hair than others. Other parts the paint might be a little thinner, so you can see that kind of bluish gray background around it. While I've got this color on my brush, I'm going to add some streaks of sideburn hair coming down here, just flowing along the sides of the face, flowing and growing. Occasionally leaving a little bit of the background color showing through. Look at that, looking good. Looking good. Oh, I don't know why I'm washing my brush. I need white next. Let's do this white shine on Santa's nose, cheeks, and eyes. So it's super easy. Littlest brush, white paint. Now you don't want to go right along the edge of this dark outline. You want to come down just a bit. So you're in the pink area and literally just do a little white swoop that matches the curve of the cheeks. And it can be broken up. You could do one and then move over and do another. That's always kind of cute. And that's what I did on the nose. I did like a swoop, stopped, and then a little extra. And when this dries, if you feel like it needs a second coat of white, you can totally go back and do it if you want it to stand out a bit more. And then for the eyes, they're very small, so we don't have a lot of room, but I just use the tip of the bristles in the upper left corner of each eye. I do a little white dot. And if you have room in the lower, or just down angular from it, and kind of like the lower right, you can do another smaller dot. And now he's got twinkling eyes. Look at that, so cute. Now we have a little bit of a lower lip showing here. And this was something I wasn't gonna add it on, but I decided to do it. And it's really easy to have it look like a tongue, like Santa's sticking out his tongue. So I'll show you how to avoid that, unless you want it to look like he's sticking out his tongue. It's just a tiny peekaboo view of a little bit of lower lip. So I've already got white on my brush. Let me just pull it aside here and put it down on my palette. Now grab just the tiniest bit of red. You just want a pale pink. And just under here, I'll just do a little curve. So it's just like this is your line. It's like a little U shape. And I feel like once I have it painted on here, I need a little more red mixed in here. It's okay, his lips can be kind of red. There. That's the right color. I think. Looks like it. Doesn't look too much like a tongue. Just by keeping it small. You can make it into a big round circle. You can be blowing a bubble gum. Oh, the things we can do. So many things we can do. Okay, before we go too far, I have some fun shading on the hat, and I love the way that looks. It's just kind of almost looks like it's airbrushed in. It's really easy to do. We'll be kind of, let's wash this number 8 brush. You'll be kind of switching between using red and white. I mean, sorry, red and black. Red with black mixed together, sorry. I had a moment of my brain kind of went to sleep for a second. Just thinking of one part of the Santa while talking about another. Okay, so let's make our shade color. Grab some red, plop it off here somewhere. And we're gonna mix black into half of this so that we have fresh red nearby and then the shaded color. Now you don't need much black at all, so maybe use your smallest brush to pick up a dot and put it down here and wash that little brush off. And then bring that in. So we don't want a super dark color. It's kind of like a cranberry color. And having that red here nearby is helpful because then I can mix it, brighten it up, or lighten it up. I need more red. I'm gonna go along the edge here. It could almost be a little darker. Yeah, so it makes a burgundy color, burgundy / cranberry, somewhere in between there. Merlot, how about that? Now I don't want to start my shading with a lot of paint on my brush, and I have a lot of paint on my brush from mixing. You can see there's quite a bit there. So I'll usually just drag it off on my palette or maybe a paper towel too, so you have a combination of, you have left some paint on your palette, but then got rid of some of it on your brush there. And I'm going along the edge. This is, if you have done the snowman, this is exactly how we did the blue on the face. Work in segments, go along the edge. I'm gonna wipe my brush. Now just let your brush run out of paint as you pull inward. So that leaves a nice shaded area along the outside edge. I've got funky glare. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. This light here is, you're being kind of obnoxious. Well, that might be worse. It's probably not too big of a difference. So, and then what I do is this gets a little bit mucky once your brush starts drying. So I'm gonna wash it and dry it. And I'll go back to pure red and kind of work from the inside, knocking off excess paint and then coming in here into the shaded area to smooth those out together. Kind of make them blend. Force them to blend. There we go. That was accidental. Grabbed some white. Then I'll just work on this area, and you'll start getting the hang of like how much paint you should use. Just pull that shady color inwards as your brush runs out of paint. Sometimes I'll wipe my brush off on the towel and just work with the wet paint that's already on here. And the other part that I shade is right around this. In fact, this could even be painted into that groove there. Again, just letting your brush run out of paint as you're pulling away from your shaded area and into the main part of the hat. So that leaves this nice shaded area around here and around the edges. And this is a process you can repeat if you feel like, oh, you know, I really need to go back and add some darker shading around the edges. Just do a second coat. And if it got too dark, and you want to brighten it up again, bring in your bright red. And I like to work, like I said earlier, from the middle part outwards, because then by the time you reach that dark paint, your brush has run out of a lot of this main red paint, and so you're not like trying to mix a whole bunch of paint with a small amount that's dried. You're just kind of getting a glazing effect, which is what we want. You're just glazing over the edges of this shaded area. Yeah, that looks pretty good. See a spot I need to do a touch up here. And it's such an easy thing to do that it adds a nice level to this without it just being solid block colors. We've got shading. We've got fur. We've got swirls. We've got it all. So that definitely needs to dry before we touch anything around it. Let's go back to our beard and mustache. So looking at my mustache, I feel like this one really drooped down a bit more. And I kind of like that. And it's easy to make that one do the same thing just by taking my smaller brush, my smallest brush. And remember earlier I showed you these brush strokes where you're kind of just doing this curved overlapping thing? That's what I'm going to do, but with white. And this will help me, like if you overlap the lip a little bit, the top edge of the lip, that can help make it look like it's behind everything. And I'm going to have to bring some more outlining in later. But that was one of the things I noticed. It's like, oh, you know, I actually like the way that mustache droops downward a little more into the beard. Okay, looks good. Let's let that dry and we'll work on these subtle little outlines. And they're not really outlines, they're more like accent colors, because you can see if I hold this up, I didn't outline, like I just did a shaded little darker swatch here, under here, just little accents. And the color we want to make is just a blue and black. So let's mix it with a bigger brush. Let's mix it with like our number 8. Scrape off some blue and about half that amount of black, thereabouts. You're gonna get kind of a midnight color. Very nice color, love that. And we don't wanna use a color that's that dark, so we're gonna put just a little white to start. And a little more white. Just looking at my white, it's very bad. Look at my bad habits. It's very polluted, but luckily it's polluted mostly with blue, and that's what I have coming up is white and blue mixed together. So maybe it was a subconscious plan, I guess. I'll just think of it that way. Okay, wash my brush off. We're gonna use our smallest brush. If you do better with thinned out paint, which most beginning painters do better with the paint being a little bit thinner, you can take your little brush, dip it in water, and just swirl some water in here. Not a lot. Just enough to make this a little bit more fluid than right out of the tube. I'm gonna pull and twist my brush just to knock off excess mix paint. Actually, just as I did that, I noticed my water didn't get mixed in super great, so I'm gonna do that again. Okay, and now let's just do this one on the corner that we started with. Just go on the inside and trace along for a little bit. You don't have to trace the whole entire swirl, just a bit of it. I'm like, I'll do this one too, just on the inside edge maybe. Maybe a little on the outside here, just a little slash. And if this isn't dark enough, like you're not getting a high enough contrast, I feel like mine could be a tiny bit darker. Just add a little more blue and black in there, just tiny bits, till you get it the way you want. It's real easy to accidentally overdo it. This is a great way too, that if some of your swirls ended up maybe a little too chunky, too thick, this can help thin them out a bit. We don't have a whole lot left to do. What are we at? We're at just a little over an hour here. So I'm going to give you a little secret on this that would be really cute and fun. If you are a glitter person, which I am totally a glitter person, you can take at any craft store, Michael's, whatever, you can buy Mod Podge. And Mod Podge is like a thin down glue. I've got some in a bottle here I would show you, but oh, here. Oops. This is what it looks like. This fun like 1960s logo. I love it. They've never changed it, really. You can buy it in matte finish or gloss. And for doing glitter, I like to do matte finish, because if you accidentally paint it in an area where you don't want glitter, it's not going to stand out in like glossy patches. So the matte finish is good, and you would just like paint it on here and here, and then do a white iridescent fine glitter while the Mod Podge is still wet, and then just tap it off, and you've got a glittery Santa. You've gone extra. Santa is blinged out. I think that would be really cute. So if you feel like your brush is really dragging, refresh your mix with a drop of water, because it does, that water evaporates really fast. I like the effect of this. And there's some areas I see that maybe I didn't do a great job, but I can go back with white and touch that up. Like I said, it's a series of touch-ups. Sounds like it's raining outside. Are you shocked? In Oregon, it's raining. We pretty much will have rain until about May. There's this saying, you know, April showers bring May flowers, but in Oregon it's like April showers bring May showers. It rains a lot. I don't mind it. As a kid I hated it. I wanted sun, but as an adult I'm like more into like being cozy inside. I'm just touching up some of these with white. This is great indoor painting weather. So yeah, this is a great time once you've put in your accent darker color. Great time to go back, and if any of these white swirls need a cleanup from too much outline, or just need a second coat of white because it dried more transparent than you wanted it to, you can totally come in and fix it up. I think I went a little more outliney on this one compared to this one. This one looks like I left quite a few areas without outlines. But sometimes when I am teaching something, I will just keep going, and a lot of that's just, you know, knowing I don't want to rush everybody on to the next part. I'll give you guys adequate time. And then what happens is I end up with a lot of extra stuff. So I mentioned in our snowman video that we would love for you to join our Facebook group page if you haven't yet. And it's not a business page. Like, our business page is just called GoBox, but our group page, which we're most active on, is called GoBox Art Crate. So it's the whole phrase. And it's composed of subscribers to GoBox, or people who just like to paint, or maybe like to paint along with our videos. And people share their paintings, or you can lurk and look at everybody else's projects until you feel confident enough to share your own. And we'll post our upcoming projects, so they usually get posted there first. Everybody gets to be in the know on there, and it's just fun. We have a lot of fun on there. Great support. People on there are so friendly, and it's been wonderful. So I highly recommend you join that if you are on Facebook and if you're interested. Okay, so I'm going to now go back to my mustache, or my Santa's mustache. Hopefully I never grow one of those. And I'm going to mix a little more black with this just to make it a little more gray. Maybe a little water because my paint's drying up. And you can go back in. You want to knock off most of the paint on your brush. Go back in and kind of re-outline as needed the bottom edge of Santa's mustache. And if you get too much outline, you can just let it dry a bit and then come in with some white doing the exact same thing. So eventually it will get to the point that you've got just the right amount. Okay, looking good. If you've got room and you're really good with tiny brushwork, this is super easy, you can take just the littlest, like, tiny amount of white on here, and you could highlight the lip just a little bit. Keep it small or it's gonna look like a big tooth. Okay, getting down there to the last stuff. Let's take our number 4 brush. We're done with all of this, unless you want to go back and add anything or touch anything up. I'm going to make a really pale blue, maybe a little lighter than that. Yeah, that's maybe a little bluer. Okay, that's too much. I'm gonna come along here and get a blue. It's pretty much that same color, I guess. Didn't have to be lighter. I'm gonna come along here and give a blue base to the fur lining on the hat. And you can see my brush strokes are kind of going all different directions just to start suggesting that fur texture. We'll use a littler brush to get the white bits on there, and it's going to come down and meet the sideburns on both sides. It's just going to come right across the top edge of the cheeks and the eyes here. And that's going to dry for a minute or two. Let's wash the brush. And now you can use either this number 4 brush using the thin edge or your smallest brush. Maybe try both and see which one feels right to you. And I'll dip the tip of the bristles in the white. And starting from the middle, I just start flicking outward in kind of a fuzzy shape like this, like a fuzzy spider or sea urchin. And I keep going around, adding more paint. Just layer after layer heading outward. So you are leaving tiny bits of the blue background showing like this. That's what's gonna give it that textured look. Got a little here, that's all right. And you're just gonna keep doing that until you meet the edge. Always using that thin edge of the brush. Now I suppose I could flick this into this part of the hat, but I didn't on here, and I don't want to do that on the video just in case it ends up looking weird. But now I want to take white and get it into this whole entire groove here, being careful along the red area. If you ended up with too much white, you could always go back to the blue we just mixed here and just get some of it on there, just to change it up a bit. I bet you could paint the back of this. It doesn't have the cutout notches, but I bet you could. I'm trying to think what this shape looks like, if it could look like anything else. A melted snowman. Actually, it looks like kind of like a ghost shape. You could do a Halloween painting on the back. Like maybe this is its arm. I don't know. Or you could do Santa. Another Santa. Mrs. Claus. Can we do Mrs. Claus back there? If Mrs. Claus had a beard. Okay, enough of that. Let's go ahead now. This is still a little bit wet, and that's okay. I think it will still work because it's mostly dry. It looks like it's about 80% dry. We're going to do the same thing. So take your white use the thin edge of this brush and flick around. Now look at how I flick over the red here. I love the look of that. And I'll occasionally like flick so it's this direction and maybe this direction, so it's gives the look of like kind of messed up fur. Like he's been out in the sleigh. Fur blowing everywhere. If that blue is still wet and you're not getting the effect of white with a little blue underneath, let it dry a bit longer before you do this part. Down here along the face, I think I might switch to a smaller brush, but I'll get the bulk of this. Okay, so this little brush is what I will use to get tiny little flicks of fur that maybe just tickle the tops of his cheeks and nose. And yeah, you'll notice I'm brushing my brush in different directions, just with a little flick, very little pressure. And this is something you can build on. If you get it done and think, oh, you know, it's maybe a little too blue, let it dry a bit and go in with some more white. Or if it ended up looking all too white and you've lost your texture, streak some blue back in there. Now if you obviously you guys have the kit, those of you who are doing these wood projects, and so you have your silver paint. One area you could add silver to, I've got a bottle of silver here somewhere. There it is. The silver is really liquidy, like obnoxiously liquidy, but it works good for what we need it for. So if you do want to add silver, I think right through the here would be a great spot for the sideburns, because then that really differentiates this compared to that by adding silvery hair. And of course, if you add it there, you'll want to add some touches of it through maybe the bottom edge of the mustache here. It's kind of a little bit darker than the white, so along the bottom edge is good, or just the occasional random streak there. But I think it would look really cool if you really want to get into these swirls again. Coming in and adding some silver accents. Now the silver paint is more transparent than the white, so it's not going to be a super in-your-face change. It's just like, it's one of those things that you tilt it in the right light. It's like, oh, look at that. So there we go. Super cute. Look at the difference between the two. I love it. They just look like brothers. And the difference was the cheeks and nose on this one came up a little bit higher, and then the eyes are maybe a tiny bit closer together. But there you have it. I hope you guys had fun, and I hope you continue to have fun doing our art projects. We have such a huge amount of projects now. If you go to gobox.com and click on shop, you can see we have just about every holiday covered. We've got a lot of kids projects and lots of landscapes. Paul does a ton of landscapes, and a lot of them have like a very Bob Ross-y kind of feel, lots of mountains and things like that. And then mine are always whimsical, so any of the animals, owls, elephants, that kind of thing. Those would be mine, because I love painting whimsical. But anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season. I hope you enjoyed doing this project with me, and I always look forward to your comments and suggestions for other projects. And I hope you'll join our Facebook group. But more than anything, have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you again for all of your support, and we'll see you next time. Bye.